G'day gamers! Ranger Tony here, back with episode 2 of my Oblivion Survival Guide called Mastering Melee and Marksman. So what we're going to do in this episode is I'm going to show you how physical combat, and I'm not including unarmed combat here, I'm talking about with weapons. So weapon combat is skewed against you, and there's a little trick that can transform your Oblivion playthrough. I used to find Oblivion frustratingly hard, just ridiculously hard. And I'm talking about both, well, definitely the original Oblivion. Remastered is much better, I will say, because they reduce the health of a lot of the enemies. But it was still challenging, even on Adept, to get through as a melee character. I've done it, and it was challenging, but it was doable, whereas it did not used to be that way with the original Oblivion. And most of the opponents in that game just seemed to be damage sponges. And we're going to show you that, and I'm going to explain. It's almost as if they built the game and this was the way you were supposed to play. And it's just, I don't know that it's really talked about. I haven't seen, it's mentioned in wikis, but it's not emphasized as being as powerful as it is. So let's dive on in and have a look, shall we? The problem that you've got in Oblivion, and I'll be switching back and forth between the game and the wiki, but this is my character here. It's the same character I used for the last video. We're level 19, but we are a mage, so we don't have any weapon skills at all. So you can see here, all of these bladed weapons are doing 1 point of damage. The bow and the arrow are doing 2 each. Now that's because they buffed bows and arrows. They basically doubled the damage. Not all the time, but for most of it, it's at least a third more, if not 50%. Sorry, at least 50% more, if not double the damage that it used to be. And that does make sense because the bows were always underpowered, and it takes such a long time to make a shot with the bow. And of course, enemies can dodge. So you do really want the bow to be more powerful. But you can see that we've got very little damage there. And that is how you would be at the start of the game. Now, at the start of the game, you're coming across enemies that are exceedingly weak. If you remember, you go into the tutorial and you come across rats, and with a weapon doing a little bit more damage than this. Generally, if you pick up the Akaviri katana or the steel short sword off the captain who gets killed, then you're doing 2 or 3 points of damage with each of those. I think 2 for the short sword and 3 for the katana. And at 2 damage, you will require 2 hits to kill most of the rats. And I think like 3 or 4 hits to kill most of the goblins in the tutorial mission. The big exception to that, of course, particularly if you're playing the original Oblivion, is the zombie, who is an incredibly weak zombie, but he will take 5 or 6 swings to take down, no matter what weapon you're using. In the original Oblivion, it's not quite so bad. In Remastered, he takes like 3 or 4 hits to bring down, but still. So you're introduced to the game where most of your opponents are coming down with a reasonable amount of hits, right? But it is, and so you'll walk out of the game. You'll get out of the tutorial dungeon, the Imperial sewers, and you'll have, or the prison sewers. You will have, if you've chosen a weapon skill, be it blade, blunt, or marksman, you will have, for bows, you'll have something which is doing about 8 points of damage, I think, 6 to 8 points of damage. And for all the other weapons, you'll have something which is doing 3 to 4. Okay. maybe 5, but I think it's 3 or 4 points of damage at that point. And then you go out and you'll get out to the main dungeon. You'll get out to the greater, wider world, and you will come across, for example, a mud crab which has 10 health, and it does 8 points of damage, and you'll 4 or 5 points of damage from your weapon, 2 to 3 swings, that mud crab is dead. I mean, if you've got a great sword, I think you're probably taking the mud crab down in 2 hits, definitely. So yeah, that's not too bad. And the rats will go. Most of them will go down. The early game rats will go down with one swing. So it doesn't seem so bad, and the game just sort of sets you up early game to think, oh yeah, this is not too bad. But before too long, you're going to come across things that are much more difficult. So by level 6, and if we have a look at the weapon table here, by level 6, we should definitely have steel weapons, right? And we might even from loot found silver and maybe even dwarven. So let's say we've got silver. Let's go and have a look at a silver longsword. Now it says here, of course, that it does 14 points of damage, but it doesn't. Silver longsword will not do 14 points of damage at level 6. It'll do probably half that. You'd be lucky to get 6 or 7 points of damage out of it, because the only way you get 14 points of damage is if you have 100 in blade, and you will not have that until you're around probably late teens, early 20s level. So you definitely don't expect that at that point. So let's be generous and say we're doing 7 points of damage with that. When we come across a timber wolf, we have to have nearly 10 swings to take down a wolf with a weapon that's doing 7 points of damage. Meanwhile, it's doing 14 points of damage back at us, which is what our weapon would be doing if we had full skill, but we don't. And it's that's a common trend, right? Black bears are available at level 7, and they do 22 points of damage, and in the original game they had 150 health, and we had in Oblivion Remastered they still have 81. Trying to take down a black bear with even if we upgraded to a dwarven longsword and said we were doing 8 points of damage with that, yeah, the black bear. Let me get rid of that one so it's not in that one, so that I don't confuse myself. The black bear is going to take at least 10 hits, maybe more. Now, thankfully, a lot of these enemies that I've talked about so far, we see one of them. You will occasionally, as you can actually see from this picture down here, you will occasionally see a couple of bears together, and that's at the higher levels. But generally speaking, you're only going to come across a single bear at a time, or a single wolf, unlike in Skyrim, where you come across multiple wolves at a time. But let's look even further. You come across a troll. Now, trolls start appearing at level... it doesn't tell me, but I'm pretty sure that they're at a similar level to the bear. Actually, let's just quickly check in here. It'll tell us. The trolls start appearing at level 8. Right, so that was right. Same level as the bear. So level 8, well, the troll has 80 health, 36 in... So they've dropped the health of the trolls a lot. And it's only because trolls are so damn fast. Those things are insanely fast. So they've dropped the health a lot. But even so, that means... you're looking at 4 hits to take out a troll with, a dwarven weapon at level 8. And they get higher leveled from there. And 4 hits actually isn't too bad, but in the original game that was a lot worse. Let's have a look at something even higher. Minotaurs. Now I'm sure Minotaurs are around level 9 that they start appearing. And it's not going to tell us there, and I should have kept the other thing open. But anyway, about level 9, and so we might even have access to some slightly higher leveled weapons at level 9. Yeah, we might even be lucky to have Elven. Elven Longsword would be 18. Let's say we're doing 10 points of damage at that point. In the original game, that's 30 hits, and in Remastered, that's 11 hits to kill. Like, this is getting ridiculous, and this is why the game always seemed so hard. Now, having said that, I didn't, when I was playing the original Oblivion, I wasn't just running around with unenchanted weapons, right? It's obvious that this makes it very obvious that you should be using an enchanted weapon. And that's what I'm getting at here. Like ogres, 26 times your level -3. I think ogres start appearing at like a level 10 or 11, something like that. So if they appeared at level 10, which I'm not sure about, but if they did, that would be 26 times 7, which is too much for my brain to handle at this point in time. 140. So you're looking at about 150, 160. Min 406. No, that can't be right. Maybe it is. But even if this one's right, min 208. 208. That's 20 hits from a weapon. From a weapon that's doing 10 points of damage. So yeah, you're in a pretty bad situation. It only gets worse if you start doing some of the main quest line and start going into Oblivion gates, right? Because you've got Daedroth 280, or even essentially 200 hit points. Daedroth appear at level, I can't remember, but I think it's like level 11 or 12 or something like that. And they do 40 points of damage. The one that everybody hates, the Spider Daedra, 300 health or 168 in Oblivion Remastered. Now, that is just, and look at the health on the Spiderlings. The Spiderlings still have 60 health in Oblivion Remastered. If you had a weapon that was doing even 15 points of damage, that's 4 hits to kill that little Spiderling, and those things paralyze you and also damage health, but the paralyze is the one that kills you. That's the one that really gets you bad. And yeah, this is where the game just really screws you over. It seems like all the enemies are just absolute damage sponges, and they just soak up the hits, and you have to swing so many times. And the problem is because you never just come across a Spider Daedra. It's always got its Spiderlings. You never just come across, well, you do occasionally come across a Daedroth, but quite likely there's usually other things around them. Ogres are rarely by themselves. There's usually like 2 ogres or an ogre and a couple of trolls. Minotaurs are fairly often by themselves, but a lot of these higher level creatures are just, all they're going to do is absolutely spam you. And then you've got the Dremora, and they're often in groups, and they can summon. And they're, depending on their level, their health isn't too bad, and the amount of damage that they're doing isn't too bad. But as I said, it's always that you're coming across multiples of them. And as I showed in the previous episode, when you're getting surrounded by multiple opponents and you're getting hit multiple times, and your armor is degrading more and more with each hit, so you're taking more and more damage with each hit, that's what kills you in this game. So at least for me, the tactic is take out your opponents as quickly as you can. And I never spread damage between multiple opponents. I concentrate on one opponent and take them out, and then move on to the next, because you will die if you say, I'll hit him, and then I'll hit him, and then I'll come back to him. No. The game will punish you if you do all that sort of stuff. So it really becomes a thing of, what can I do to maximize the damage that I'm doing? Getting your level in your skill as high as possible, but that only works to its maximum. You cannot go higher than 100 in the weapon skill, in any skill. So once you're at 100 points in the weapon skill, that's it. Now you can use armorer. Once you get to level 75 in armorer, you can improve your weapons beyond 100% durability, which improves their damage, but it's only a maximum of 25% more. And again, you know, if you look at this Daedric Longsword, 24 points of damage, that makes it 36. It's still going to take a lot of hits to kill something which has 300 health, or even 200 health, right? And, you know, it doesn't really matter. Even the big hitting weapons, the claymores, and the battle axes and the Daedric Warhammer, you know, you're doing weapons in the 30s. You know, there is no weapon in the game without enchantments that does 40 points of damage, and you're coming across enemies that you're going to need to hit 5, 6, 7 times to kill them. So you need to reduce that, right? And so that's what we're going to look at. We are going to look at what you can do with enchanting to your weapon, because I think there's some stuff that people just don't realize. Now, you will find enchanted weapons throughout the game from time to time, and you'll find artifacts and all that sort of stuff. But none of them are really all that good. You can make stuff that is as good. Well, actually, I'm going to show you how you can make stuff that is better than anything that you will find. But let's have a look, right? So I've got a bunch of soul gems here. Let's just pick it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter. So first of all, it doesn't matter what weapon type, whether it's a bladed or a blunt weapon or a bow. It doesn't matter what size it is. So you can put exactly the same enchantment on a iron dagger or a rusty iron dagger as you can on a Daedric Warhammer. And the enchantments will all do exactly the same amount of damage. You'll be getting different base damages from the weapon, but you're going to see that really doesn't matter a huge amount. I mean, it does, but it's not going to be what you think it is. All right? So let's have a look. We'll just pick the longsword for the moment, and we're going to pick a grand soul gem. Now, the first sort of weapon that you're probably likely to find is something which has elemental damage. Fire, frost, or shock on it. Right? So let's just pick fire because it's the top of the list. So if you don't know how this works, you've picked your item, you've picked your soul gem, we've now picked the enchantment, and we're going to pick the magnitude, area, and duration. And then you've got these three across the bottom. This one here is how much potential, I don't know what they want to call it, but it's how much you can get out of that soul gem. And so at the moment, with this enchantment set to do 3 points of damage on the target for 1 second, we're using 3 points out of 85 of the charge. And that weapon, being that it's a grand soul gem, would have 533 charges to it, which would be ridiculous. No weapon has that many charges on it. But you want to maximize this, right? Because at the moment, even once you've got full skill in, well, you know, as we saw before, if this was a Daedric Longsword, that weapon is going to do a maximum of 24 points of damage. I think what was the iron longsword doing? Let's just go back and have a look. So the iron longsword will do 10 points of damage at maximum, right? At the moment, it's doing 1, but because I have no skill in it. But it'll do 10 points of damage. What can we get that up to? So we drag this over until we get this maxed out. And you can see that we can put 40 points of damage of fire damage onto this weapon. But we only have 19 charges, 19 hits with this. And be aware, bows work ever so slightly different. You lose a charge with a bow, whether the arrow hits or not. Every shot that you make with a bow would be 1 charge, whether you just shoot at a stump or whether you're actually shooting at an enemy. Doesn't matter what you hit, as soon as you release the arrow, it uses a charge. So just be aware of that. But that means that, let's say we have a Daedric Longsword, we said it does 26 points or 24 points of damage, which would be 36 if it was... we use the armor skill to improve it to 125%. Actually, no, it wouldn't be 36. I got that wrong. It would be 28 points of damage. It's 125, not 150%. So 28 points of damage from... No, 24 would be 6. It would be 30 points of damage. Don't mind me. So 30 points of damage, but then we put this enchantment on it. That weapon's going to do 70 points of damage. Now, let's be fair. That is not terrible. But also remember, you've got to have a Daedric weapon, which you can't find until you're at least level 19, and you've got to have 100% in blade skill, which might take you more than 19 levels to get to that, and you've got to have more than 75 levels in armorer, which you will probably have at that point, but you might not. And you've got to have a Grand Soul gem with a Grand Soul in it and 840 gold, because I didn't mention that's what that is. It costs you 840 gold to make this enchantment. That doesn't really make sense. Where does the gold go? It just disappears into the ether, but, you know, it's a game. We live with that. And we're only getting 19 enchantments out of that. And you got to remember, 19 uses out of that. So you got to remember, once that runs out of charge, you've got to use soul gems to recharge it. And essentially you need to, from completely empty back up to full, you essentially need a Grand Soul worth of charges to get it back. So if you waited until the weapon was half depleted, right? So let's say you used 10 of the 19 charges, you could use a greater soul gem to get it back to, well, it would be close to full at that point, but it would be essentially full. That's expensive. A greater soul is like 600 gold to buy a soul gem with that, and trying to farm it isn't easy because you got to find something that has a greater soul in it, and, you know, it's not impossible to do, but you've got to go and look on the wiki and find out which ones have got it and all that sort of stuff. So, you know, there's a lot of work to go there. So this isn't terrible, but you've also got to remember, this is end game enchantment. What is it like if we tried to do the same thing with a petty soul? You know, what could we do early game on a weapon? Because I probably didn't mention this, but if you're not aware, you get a filled petty soul gem during the prison sewers when you kill the goblin witch in that big room, which has the pit in it with the rats in it. When you kill that goblin witch, either on his body or in the chest right near him is a filled petty soul gem. So essentially, if you can get access to an enchanting table, an enchanting altar after that, and I'll show you how later, you can do this at level 1. But we've only got 15 points here. So what sort of charge can we put on this early game? Well, we can put 10 points. Now, early game, 10 points is a bit, but, you know, it's not great. Now, there is things that you can do, right? If we go back to the Grand Soul Gem, I'll just show you something else. We said 40 points of damage and it was going to have 19 charges, didn't we? So we went to 40, 19 charges. Well, what you can do is if we put this back at 10 and put the duration at 4, we haven't used up all of the capacity, but we now have 28 charges. That's going to do the same amount of damage. It takes longer because it's doing 10 points every second for 4 seconds, but you can get more out of your enchantment either by having more charges or by adding, we could add a larger charge to that, and we could do 13 points for 4 seconds and do 52 points of damage rather than 40 points of damage, right? So there are options there, and you can also do things mix and match. For example, we could do, say, 5 points of fire damage over 4 seconds, and then also add 5 points of frost damage over 4 seconds and 5 points of shock damage over 4 seconds. And I'm pretty sure we'd be able to fit all of those 3 on here. Right? And so now you're doing 60 points of damage. Right? But again, you've only got 19 charges. So we're doing 60 points of damage with this weapon, which is quite good, but only 19 charges. And that's a grand soul gem, right? Try to do multiple enchantments with a petty, forget it. You're not going to get anything worthwhile. So let's look at something different then. So I guess... Uh-oh. Right. So let's have a look at something different then. There are different enchantments that you can put on. There are 3 enchantments, and you'll be able to see them on the screen right here, that affect health. And they all work a little bit differently. Let's look at them one by one. I'll explain them all briefly, and then we'll look at them one by one. Absorb health. So this is a necromantic health drain. It takes the health from your opponent, gives it to you. Damage health. It's just straight up extra damage for the weapon. Like, that's all it is. And then there's drain health. Drain health is a little bit weird because this takes the health away and then at the end of the period gives it back. Right? But if the draining away, if in that period when it drains away, which is instant, it instantly takes it away. And if your health goes below 0, they die. They don't come back when after that period is finished. Excuse me. They just die. Straight up. All right? But let's have a look at absorb health. So absorb health with a grand soul gem. What can we get up to? Well, we can get to 22 points. And that's less than we could with the elemental damage, but you're getting that 22 points of health. Right? So that can be useful. Again, only 19 charges, but again, we could do things like 10 points over 2 seconds. So we're getting 20 points of health over 2 seconds, and we get 26 uses out of that rather than 19. So, and again, you can mix and match. You could do 10 points of health over 1 second and then add in some elemental damage or something like that as well. But we're not going to talk about that. So absorb health. Look, this is useful. Don't get me wrong, because healing in the middle of combat is useful. In the middle of melee combat in particular. Not as useful if you're using a bow. Because ideally, if you're using a bow, you don't get hit. Ideally, you kill them before they get to you. And it doesn't always happen, but that's the general idea, right? So this is, I mean, it's still useful, but it will be wasted a lot of the time because you'll be sitting back there with full health, just shooting at everything. And it's only once they get up to you that you need that absorb health. So, yes, you're reducing their health more than just with the weapon itself, but you're not getting any benefit from the absorb health as much if you are using melee. Bows. So that's absorb health. Let's look at damage health. What can we do with a Grand Soul Gem and damage health? $28. So again, that's less than the elemental damage. You're better off using an elemental damage rather than damage health. You're better off putting fire shock, except that your enemies might have a resistance to fire or frost or shock. The only way they can resist the absorb health or the damage health or the drain health is a general resistance to magic. If your enemies have that, then they might not take an effect from this, depending on how much, and etc., etc. So, and damage health, again, you can do it duration based, so you can go 10 points for, you might even be able to get 10 points for 3 seconds out of this, making it just that little bit more powerful. Not quite 4 seconds, so 10 points for 3 seconds, quite good. And you get 23 charges, so, you know, not too bad. Well, this is what we've been leading up to, everybody. Drain health. And I'm actually going to take a step back, and we're going to look at drain health with just a petty soul gem. What can you do with a drain health enchantment on a weapon at level 1 in Oblivion? Original or remastered, it doesn't matter. This works. Where do you think? Put it down in the comments. Where do you think you can get to with this? Let's just count it up and watch. We're at 30 points. We're at 40 points. Now, this is where we could get to with a Grand Soul using elemental damage. And this is only this is a petty soul, the smallest soul you can get. It only has 15 points of charge. And at 40 points there, we're still getting 15 uses out of this. We're at 50. We can get to 57 points of damage. We can drain their health for 1 second of 57 points of damage with a petty soul gem costing us 150 gold, and we get 10 charges. That's insane. Right? That is insane. With that weapon, you will kill any creature that you come across up until, you know, the Timber Wolf at level 6 that we talked about, you won't kill with 1 hit. But everything up till then, you probably will. And if it's not 1 hit, you'll kill it on the second. The only thing that works differently with this enchantment is the duration, right? So if I up the duration to 2 seconds and I drop this back to, say, 25 points of damage, that won't do 50 points of health. That will just drain 25 points and keep that drain of 25 for 2 seconds or 3 or 4 or whatever you set it to, all right? When is this important? Well, most of the time, you're going to leave it on 1 second duration. Because let's think of the scenario. You're going through Oblivion. You've got Dremora on one side of you. You've got Daedroth and Spider Daedra on another. And you are madly swinging your weapon. You're killing everything around you in 2 hits. Not with this weapon, because once I show you the next levels of soul gems, you can get this up to 100 points, right? So you're killing everything around you in 1 or 2 hits, and you're able to swing fast enough that the first hit will drop them by 100 health, and they might be sitting there with just a tiny little bit of their health bar left. The second hit is going to drop them by another 100 health, and they're going to die. So most of the things, when you're using a melee weapon, most things are going to die in 2 hits. Because if the first hit doesn't completely kill them, the second will. With the exception that if they have some resistances to magic, this effect might not always proc. So you might just do normal weapon damage, and then next time you'll do normal weapon plus the enchantment. And not necessarily next time, but when it does next proc, you'll get through it. So you do have to be careful a little bit. But you will find that the vast majority of opponents, 2 to 3 swings, and they're gone. Because one of those swings might not proc, and the other ones do. And even if they, even if they avoid a couple of them, you've done normal damage there, and then finally the full damage hits and they die. So, yeah, you don't need the duration to be more than 1 second. But you might want to use 2 seconds if you're using a bow. Purely because it is so slow to shoot with a bow, and if you miss, so let's say your first shot hits, their health drops, they're still alive, the next shot will kill them, and you shoot and they dodge and miss, if you can get that next shot off within those 2 seconds, you'll kill them. If you don't, the health will come back and you'll have to, it might take a third actual hit. So that's how it's going to work. So let's have a look. I'm not going to bother showing you the lesser. We'll show you the lesser soul gem. We might as well. Drain health. We can get to 55. That was what we just had. Were we using a petty before? Oh, that's a lesser soul gem with a petty soul. There we go. Everyone's shouting at me that you just chose petty again. Look at that. We can't actually. I went a little too far. I thought it was all still black down there. Okay, we can get to 83 points with 12 there. Once you've got lesser, you'll probably want to sit it on, say, 50 and have 23 uses on it. That's not too bad. And then to recharge that, a couple of petty souls, and you're done. Right? But it's once you get to the common soul that you really start to feel powerful, because that's where you can go 100, and you've still got charge on there in case you want to add more to it, but you've got 25 uses and you're doing 100 points damage bonus on that weapon. And like we saw, so many creatures have between 100 and 200 points of health, even in the original game. A lot of the really big guys in the original game have 300 points of health, and some might even have more. But now it doesn't feel like every enemy is so squishy. I will admit, it does feel like some of the lower level opponents, as soon as you can do 100 points of damage, even once you're doing 50 points of damage, a lot of your low level enemies they feel like nothing. If you just walk past them and look at them and they die. And it does feel incredibly powerful to use like a dagger and put this enchantment on it and just go stab and they die. Not even sneaking, just normal stab, you're dead. Mentioning sneak, it will not become 400 or 600 points of drain health if you do a sneak attack. With a melee weapon, or 200 points of damage if you do it with a bow, or 300 points of damage if you do it with a bow. The sneak attack does not multiply the spell effects; it only multiplies the weapon damage. But that doesn't matter. You don't need to worry about that anymore. You don't need to sneak. So what you're basically looking at, and then of course if we go back a step, you know, and look at the Grand Soul Gem, 100 points of drain health, and we get 50 charges out of that. That is just, hands down, that is, it doesn't matter what you're using as your base weapon. That is better than any of the artifacts, any of the pre-made weapons in the game. Nothing compares to that. 50 charges? No, you will not see 50 charges on anything. Well, okay, I might be wrong there. There might be something that has that many charges on it. But 100 points of damage from a weapon with 50 charges is almost unheard of. And it only costs 320 gold to make. Right? Now, there's one more thing that you can do to this. Sure, you can add any other enchantments that you want to this when you've got a Grand Soul Gem. So we could add, you know, fire damage for 20 points. And we could add frost damage for, well, maybe not. Let's just do them both for 10. Fire for 10. Right. And we could do shock for 10. So now we're doing 130 points of damage. And we still got 21 uses on it. But this is all magical damage. So if anyone has some magical resistance, they might not take any of that effect. And there are creatures there. I don't believe there are any creatures, any opponents in the game that are 100% immune to magic, but there are creatures that are 100% immune to one particular element. Fire Atronachs, for example, are immune to fire damage. Frost Atronachs are immune to frost damage. And Shock Atronachs are immune to shock damage. You cannot hurt them. So you need to be aware of that. And yes, you know, 130 points of damage from a weapon rather than 100 is good. And you probably should consider doing that if you've got access to a Grand Soul Gem. But you don't need to. You can have the 50 charges instead and be really good. The other enchantment that you're going to want to put, and you can even do this on with the Petty Soul, is put Soul Trap on there. Because you want to be able to fill soul gems so that you can recharge this. Now, this is going to use a lot of charges, right? 45 charges, and so it like I said earlier, this is made with a Grand Soul Gem, so you need a Grand Soul Gem's worth of souls to recharge it. So if you let it use up all 45 charges on this, and it says this is out of charges, you will need to use a Grand Soul, or 2 Greaters, or 4 Commons, or 8 Lessers, or 16 Petties to charge that up, or some combination of those. Or you can go to a few select stores and any of the mage guilds and find someone who can recharge it for you for gold. And in some ways, that is almost the better way to do things. So a couple of things that I would recommend here, right? 1, as you work your way up, because you're going to start with, you're probably going to start with a steel weapon or a silver weapon and a petty soul gem or maybe a lesser, and you're going to create that. And that's going to do, say, 50 points of damage and soul trap for 1 second. And it'll have, 15 to 20 charges on it, whatever. And you'll go for a while with that weapon and it'll be really good and you'll love it. And then you'll go, okay, I've found in a store a common soul. Or maybe even a greater at that point. But let's say you found a common. Okay, I want to create the next version of this weapon. And oh, look, I've got a dwarven sword here, or dwarven version of whatever weapon I'm using. So I go and grab my dwarven weapon and my common soul gem and I put the same enchantment on it. And this time I might go to 100 points strain health. Don't sell the old weapon. Keep it. Because what you can do is use it up first, and once it runs out of charges, then use your even better one. That way you're not having to spend all of your time using up all of these soul gems that you've charged up. Now, that's the other thing. You can look at it and go, I'm not going to bother charging up, using Soul Trap to do this. I'm going to just buy a few charged soul gems because they're cheap. Because the fact of the matter is, you're not ever going to be hard up for cash in this game. You make a lot of money. And there are ways to maximize that, and I'll mention that when I talk about how I go about doing all this at level 1. But, you're not really going to be hard up for cash. So having a few spare, like, low-level soul gems just to top up or give you that emergency, a little bit of charge on a weapon, is great. And then the rest of the time, just go and pay to get them charged up, and you'll do really, really well. But just don't get rid of them. Keep them with you so that, you might, by the end of the game, you might have 4 or 5 different drain health weapons that you've used, and you just pick up whichever one you want to use at any given time, and once it starts running low on charges, you just grab the next one. And you'll be able to go through any dungeon that you can think of in the game, and you'll never have a problem because you'll always have something that's doing good amounts of damage. And there's that. So, the only, I'll just mention this now, the only downside to doing this on a weapon, and you might sit there and go, Tony, how can there be a downside? You've got a weapon that's suddenly doing 100 points more damage than it would, and it's doing like 50 points more damage, 60 points more damage than any other enchanting combination you could do on a weapon. How could there be downsides? Well, there are a couple. One is, you don't have to swing your weapon as much, whether it's swinging your weapon, blade, blunt, or whether it's shooting your bow. You don't have to do it as much because every shot, a lot of your shots are one-hit kills. So you're actually going to rise up in that skill slower than you normally would. But, as I said, money is reasonably easy to come by in this game. You can go and pay a trainer if you want to raise up quicker. All right? So there's that. The second thing is your weapon's durability is not going to go down as quickly because, again, you're not using it as much. So if you are relying on repairing your weapon to improve your armor skill, it's not going to happen. So in the example I gave earlier where I said, you've got a Daedric longsword that you've used the armor skill to get it up to 125% durability so it does an extra 25% damage, that's going to take a lot longer to happen because your weapon is not getting damaged as often, right? And if you're following my other guide, you're not wearing armor, so you're not having to repair that either. You can still just repair every piece of equipment that you pick up from opponents. Now, the other disadvantage is a lot of that equipment, because you're killing them with one hit, is going to be less damaged. If it was taking you 5, 6, 10 swings to kill somebody or something, particularly if you're talking about a bandit, you run into a bandit who's wearing armor and you want to sell that armor. If it was previously taking anywhere from 4 to 10 swings to kill them in that armor was going to take a lot of damage. And if they were hitting you multiple times during that as well, their weapon was going to take a lot of durability as well. And so when you took it all off them, and there would be stuff to repair. But now you're going to go through and you're going to kill these guys with one hit. And that might mean that there's only one piece of their equipment that has any damage on it, and it's lost maybe 1 or 2 points of durability, and that's it. So you're not getting as much advantage out of repairing stuff because there's less stuff to repair. Those are really the only major disadvantages that I can currently see with doing this. I have done this, as far as I am concerned, if you want to play an archer in Oblivion, this is the only way to go. Because there is, even in the remastered, where they have basically, seriously buffed. I mean, we can even see that on the weapons page here. They show you the difference in the damage between the original and Oblivion. So The iron bow is doing 2 points more damage. The fine iron is doing, and steel are doing 3 points more. The steel bow is doing 3 points more. Silver is doing 3. Black bow is 3. Dwarven bow is now doing 4 points more. Elven is doing 4 points more. Glass is doing 5 points more. Ebony is doing 5 points more, and the Daedric bow is doing 6 points more. And then on top of that, the arrows are similarly buffed as well. So 2 extra points from iron, 3 for steel, 3 for silver, 3 for dwarven, 4 for elven, 4 for glass, 4 for ebony, and 5 extra points for dwarven. So, Daedric. So if you have full skill in Marksman, your Daedric bow with Daedric arrows is doing 46 points of damage per hit, which is good. But if your DPS, if you're only able to get 1 shot off per second, and yet somebody with even somebody with the slowest weapon here, a Daedric Warhammer, at 28 points, they're probably able to get 2 swings a second, or at least 1.5 swings a second. And, good luck trying to dodge that when you're right in front of them, whereas, they might easily dodge your first or second shot there. So, that's a problem. So the enchantment definitely makes the bow worthwhile. And I have done that. I have gone all the way through the main campaign, so the Oblivion Crisis, and I then did the entirety of the arena as an archer, using the Marksman skill. And I got to tell you, it definitely makes the game, it's much more enjoyable playing as an archer. Without it, forget about it. And you don't need to use stealth. I did not use stealth. There was no need to, because you were just doing, every shot was a 1-shot kill. The only thing that was hard was sometimes actually landing the shot because of how much they dodge. That was the challenge of it all. And that's pretty good. That makes it enjoyable, makes it fun. Speaking of the arena, there is something that I want to mention. I don't know whether everybody else sees this or not, but I have seen this in the arena, and I'm going to mention it. I have done searches, and I cannot find any other reference to this. So I don't know whether this is just something weird about my setup or what it is, but I have tried this in both the remaster and the original. I'm using this exact setup. Train Strike 100, Soul Trap on weapons, and I'm going through the arena. My first battle in the arena goes as expected. I charge out, 1 swing or 1 shot with the bow, bang, they're dead, next opponent. I go back down, I talk to the guy, I get my money, I talk to him again and request another one, and I go back up. And I go out there and I charge in. And again, doesn't matter whether I'm using any of the melee weapons or a bow. I attack, it hits, and drain health doesn't proc. And I keep going, and I keep going, and I keep going, and it doesn't proc. Until the weapon runs out of charges. And I have a soul gem on me, so I recharge the weapon a little bit, not fully, but enough so that I can have another few swings. I swing, it procs, kills them in 1 hit. And I'm like, that's odd. So I go back down, I talk to the guy, I get my money, talk to him again, go back out for my third fight. 1 hit, dead, I'm the winner. And it's procced and worked perfectly. Like, okay, maybe it was just a fluke. Go back down, talk to the guy. Go back up with my 4th fight. Doesn't proc. Until I recharge with a soul gem, and then it does. Now, I had this problem in my Archer playthrough, and I don't really recall the full thing. But I don't know what's going on here. I haven't tested a couple of scenarios. I haven't tried to... I don't remember if I've tried to recharge my weapon after the fight and see if that meant that... Because in the middle of the fight, recharging made the enchantment work. But I can't remember if I could recharge between fights, and that may always made it work in the next one. So be aware of that. I also haven't tested this with any other enchantment. I don't know whether a normal shock damage or fire damage or absorb health or anything else would have this problem. But when I'm using this effect, it seems like every other fight doesn't work for some bizarre reason. If anybody knows why, let me know in the comments. If anyone else has seen this, let me know in the comments. If you have a solution, yes, all you need to do is recharge it, even just a small recharge by a petty soul gem in the middle, in between fights, is enough. I've thought maybe completely unequipping and re-equipping the weapon might reset something and it might work again. I haven't tried any of this stuff yet, but I want others to know that some little weird quirk that I've seen in both the original and remastered in the arena of Oblivion is that it seems like every other fight, that magic effect doesn't work until I recharge in combat, and then it seems to work. Don't know, can't tell you why that is, but that is what I see. All right. Super briefly, let's talk about how I get this all enchanted at level 1. So we are here in Frostcrag Spire. I do the following. I come out of the Imperial Prison Sewer with my petty soul gem that I got from the Goblin Witch. And I come to the Imperial City Markets, and I sell everything that I don't want to keep. And I go to Edgar Vitrine's Edgar's Discount Spells, and generally speaking, Edgar will have my Summon Magic chest. This is a mod that I like. This is a mod for Oblivion Remastered. There are similar mods in the original Oblivion, called similar things. One of them, I think you use a ring, which I haven't tried, and another one does have a spell that you can use. Well, I think it's actually, technically, it's a greater power that you use, and the only difference there is that when you use the one in Oblivion, you cast the spell, the chest appears, and then you open it up, and as soon as you close it, the chest disappears, whereas this one here in Oblivion Remastered, you have to use the spell to make it appear and then cast the spell again to make it disappear. And if you move too far away from it, it automatically disappears. This NL is some weird thing about Remastered, about some of the mods that do something. It puts that in front of it, and there is a mod that you can get which removes the NL. I don't really understand about it. But you can buy this spell fairly cheap from Edgar Vitrine. If he doesn't have it, go across the road to the Mystic Emporium and they will have it. And this makes... this is just... You can say it's cheaty or whatever, I don't care, but this is just quality of life for me because I'm sick and tired of having to stop and sell every 2 minutes. I want to be... Everything that I find, I want to be able to sell. And this is a magical world, I can guarantee you that if there was a real world with magic, one of the very first things that someone would do would be find some way to carry more stuff without, having to worry about it. And so something like this would be an everyday spell. So I cast that, and what I then do is I go around all of the Imperial City, the Arboretum and the Temple District and the City Palace don't really have anything to loot, but I go around all the other areas and go through all of the chests and barrels and stuff, and anything that can sell, I take, put it in the chest to sell, right? Then generally I come over here to Wayne's Priory and I get rid of the Amulet of Kings and grab the stuff that Joffrey will give you if you ask for assistance. Then I come down to Anvil. I join the Mages Guild and the Fighters Guilds, and I loot those in Anvil. You don't have to do both, but if you're going to do just one, I recommend the Mages Guild, even though it takes longer, because there's more stuff worth money in the Mages Guild. Lots of books. Each book is worth at least 1 gold. But I often only just pick up the books that are worth 10 or more. There's lots of scrolls and potions and stuff like that. Occasionally, there's even blank soul gems that you can pick up. But there's also all of the alchemy equipment, the mortars and pestles and the calcinators and whatever the names of the other things are, the retorts and everything. Any of that stuff, pick it up, put it in your chest, go and sell it later. And I basically go around every one of the Mages Guilds, Anvil to Skingrad, to Breville, to Leyawen, up to Shadenhall. I don't go to Bruma next. I come over to Coral, and then I go to Bruma. And once I've done all of that, I sell everything that I've got from all of those that I don't want to keep. You might have found some weapons you want to use. You might have found some clothes or armor that you want to use. Keep any of those. Any blank soul gems, if you want to fill them up, keep them. You know, whatever you want to keep. But sell everything else. And if you do that, you're going to have, well, if you haven't done the Fighters Guild, you might have a couple of grand less. But otherwise, you're going to have about 10 grand, maybe more. Right? Then what I do is I leave Bruma and I follow that there's a trail and it breaks off around here somewhere and then comes up and goes to Frostcrag Spire. And if I come outside of Frostcrag Spire, the trail sort of goes across the top of the map, and then you'll see a path going up the mountain. And it's over here. I keep forgetting it's over this way. You'll see a path coming up the mountain, and you will see this bridge. In fact, the path splits just before you go underneath this bridge. So it splits just there, and you come up around this way, and you come over that bridge, and you come up here, and you come up these stairs. Now, there's actually 2 sets of stairs just down there. As you can see, there's that set of stairs there, and there's that set of stairs there. Don't come up the first set. Because if you do, right down there is... There it goes. It just said Frostcrag Spire. Right down there is where you discover Frostcrag Spire. If you don't do that, it won't be on your map, and you won't be able to fast travel to it later. So come up this set of stairs, and then come up here. And then when you get to here, rather than going up there, you can just go up there and pick the lock if you want. This is only really relevant for the remaster. In the original, you will be given the key, and you'll just be able to go in. In fact, it'll already be on the map, so you could just fast travel straight to it. But in remaster, you have to find this place first. You can hear people talking about it in Bruma, and it'll show it on the map, but it'll be like this one here is, where it's Battlehorn Castle, where it's grayed out, and I can't fast travel there yet because I haven't found the location. So you'll have to travel here. But if you come over here, once you get here, this chest right here has the key to Frostcrag Spire. So you can just pick up that key. Otherwise, I'm pretty sure it's either an easy or an apprentice lock. It's not that hard to get into. Save scum it if you have to, and you can come in. And then normally this here is a door that's all the way across there. Just read the book. You don't even have to pick it up. Just read the book. These little things will all pop out of the ground and then go back in, and that door will open up. And that noise that you just heard was the sound that the door normally makes. And that's it. You're done. And then you can leave here and go to the Imperial Market District and go to Mystic Emporium and talk to the High Elf woman there, and you can buy from her whatever you want in here. But all you really need, I mean, you could probably not a bad idea to buy the bedroom, because that gives you the bed upstairs. But the only thing that you really need is 1 set of the Mage Tallow candles, and you come up here and use them on the altar of enchanting, and it'll put those candles there, which they won't normally be there, and you'll then be able to use this altar. And you should, at that point, have at least another 3,000 worth of gold available to you. You could have spent some of that back at the Mystic Emporium buying other soul gems to use, larger soul gems. Well, you probably, because you'll be, after you've sold everything, you know, you've come out of the sewer, you've come out of the sewer and you've sold everything after going around to all of the things, all of the guilds, you will probably get 1 or 2 levels out of that. So rest somewhere and level up. And in fact, if you need to, just down the mountain from here, well, actually at that camping site, I think there was a bed, but if there isn't, if you go down, this way, you go down this part of the hill, down and follow that trail to its end, just down over there somewhere, I think it is. There's a small campsite down there as well. I can't remember, was there a campsite here? Was there actually a bed at this campsite? But even in... no, there's not. There's no bed at this campsite. So you want to go to the other one just over there. And you can rest there if you need to, or you can go and pay to rest at an inn, or you can go to any one of the guild halls, the Fighters Guild or the Mages Guild that you've joined, and find a spare bed there. Get your couple of levels and you'll be, you know, level 2 or 3. If you're level 2 or 3, then you might find, you will definitely find maybe a handful of lesser filled soul gems, but you might even find a common soul gem if you're really, really lucky. But I wouldn't count on it until you get to about level 5, maybe, to find a filled common soul gem. And then charge up your weapon and away you go. And you are set. Like, this is it. This is the way that you are meant to play the game. This is the way that makes the game almost easy at the adept level. Because remember, most of your opponents, 1 or 2 hits. Okay, I didn't mention this. When I played through the main questline as an archer, with my bow doing this, Mankar Cameron is the main boss of that. Right? He's a mage. He has a fair bit of health. Maybe not as much as some of the opponents, but he's got a lot of... and I got to admit, I was definitely lucky here. But he's got a lot of protections. He does have some protection from magic. And he's got a lot of spells. He can dish out a lot of damage. I one-shot him with my bow. And that was just amazing. Right? That was absolutely amazing. So I haven't done it with a melee weapon yet. That is my next thing, is I'm going to be playing through... I've played around with going through with a dagger, and it works, but it feels like you've got to get so close to your opponent that there's no real... Like, you're going to get hit. If you do melee with this, you're going to take a hit every now and then. But it's not like it would normally be, where you're sitting there in front of an enemy and having to swing, 5, 6, 7 times to kill them or more. Generally 1 or 2 swings and they're dead. And if you time it just right, and if you're using maybe like a long sword or any of the 2-handed weapons, because of the reach of those, you might be able to time it just right, that you make a swing before they get close enough to swing at you, and you might be able to take them out without taking a hit. But you're going to take a hit occasionally if you're doing melee. If you're doing the bow, though, provided you see them before they see you, or you can shoot them before they get into melee range, you're not going to take a lot of damage. And it is refreshing to play Oblivion and it to be that easy. It is probably going to get to the point where I am going to start increasing the difficulty, because this tactic, this drain health spell on my weapons, does make it too easy at times. One-shotting every opponent until you get to about level 10 just feels crazy. And even after that, you're still one-shotting a lot of your opponents, and it's 2 shots otherwise. And as I said, the only thing difficult about playing as an archer is them dodging, not missing. Yeah, it is the only way to play if you're doing normal normal sort of melee or archery. This is not going to work for you with unarmed, of course, and it doesn't help you with spells. But if you want to play a... Because I'll be frank, the only time I've ever really gotten through this easy was as a mage, and even that wasn't that easy. You know, it always felt like using normal weapons, every opponent was a damage sponge. But with spells, you can do enough damage that it doesn't feel so bad. But it's easy level now. And I hope you enjoy it as much as I am enjoying it. So that's where I'm going to leave this episode. Leave me a comment if you think if you've already known about this. If not, I hope you enjoy playing around with it. Also, if you've had that problem in the arena, let me know, because I'm really curious as to what's going on there. I hope everyone's enjoyed this episode. I'll catch you for the next one. Bye now.